Hello everyone, I'm meteorologist Charlie Neese. It is Saturday, the 21st of June, the first day of summer, the longest day of the year, and welcome to it, and welcome to Hotspot Weather, where we take a look at a couple of the weather hotspots. We've got severe thunderstorms to talk about, and we also have some very, very hot weather to talk about, hottest we've seen so far this year, easily. Of course, we should be seeing that as we're heading into summer, and look, I know there are a lot of weather channels here on YouTube where you could be spending your time. I appreciate you spending time right here on Hotspot Weather. So let's take a look at those two weather hotspots from the Eastern Rockies into the Northern Plains, Midwest, back into the Northeast actually. That's where we stand a chance of seeing some severe weather across those areas over the next few days. Mainly thunderstorms with a threat for gusty winds and hail. Can't rule out some tornadoes as well. And then the big story is going to be the heat across really the eastern two-thirds of the country, where we will start to see more and more readings above 100 in the next few days. Let's take a look at the chance of severe weather first. This is from the Storm Prediction Center, where they're highlighting the chance of severe weather. This is on the 21st on Saturday. Best chance of severe weather, level 2 out of 5, which is a slight risk across the Northeast back into the Great Lakes. And then we see a couple of level 1 risk across the Northern Plains and into the Rockies, eastern Montana, and also back into parts of South Dakota into Nebraska. On day 2, which is Sunday, a level 2 out of 5 kind of shifts back a little bit into the upper plains and into the lee side of the Rockies. And we are going to be seeing a chance for thunderstorms with hail, could be some large hail, some gusty winds, and again, can't rule out a few isolated tornadoes. And then as we head into Monday on day 3, that slight risk shifts into the Great Lakes, and then a marginal risk, a level 1 risk, extends back into the plains again. You see these areas of light green. Those are just general thunderstorms, mainly heat and humidity driven thunderstorms in the heat of the day across much of the country, which you would expect to see in the summertime this time of the year as we are working into summer. Let's take a look at the jet stream pattern, and you'll see the jet stream is going to be typical for this time of the year. We see a migration of the jet stream up to the north along the U.S.-Canadian border, and with it, that takes the best chance of widespread severe weather with it, because we typically see the best chance of severe weather coincident with where the strongest jet stream winds are. And you can see this pattern where the jet stream is right along the U.S.-Canadian border. This is a lot of heat across the country. This is a 597 ridge, and we're going to be seeing temperatures across the Carolinas bumping above 100 as we head into the middle of the week. But this, generally, you don't see a lot of active thunderstorms. You can see some pop-up scattered summertime thunderstorms, but you typically don't see widespread thunderstorms when you see a pattern like this. But again, where we saw those risks of severe weather, it's kind of underneath the jet stream. But the big story over the next few days is going to be the building heat. All right, so let's take a look at the precipitation and what we're expecting over the next few days. This is the Global Forecast System, also known as the GFS, or the American model. And the American model has the big story, really, the thunderstorms over the next couple of days across the upper Midwest, but the heat that builds underneath this high over the southeast. Now, on the northwest side of that high, that's where we're going to see a battle zone set up, and that's where we start to see the best chances of severe thunderstorms as we go into Monday and Tuesday, especially as a weak high out of Canada drops down to the south. The heat high over the Atlantic, really, that's where the two meet, and that's where we see the battle zone set up, and that's why the Storm Prediction Center is calling for that chance of severe weather in this area as we go through out of the weekend into the beginning of the work week. But this is really a story of heat for much of the week, no doubt about it. All right, let's take a look at the temperatures, and again, this is going to be the highlight. You're going to be hearing a lot about this in the news over the next few days. This is 24-hour maximum temperatures. This is as we head out of Saturday into Sunday. You can see the worst of the heat first is in the plains, where we see triple digits from parts of Kansas into Nebraska and South Dakota. Lots of 90s, though, on the map. Around 100 as we go through the weekend in St. Louis, and also 95 to 100 back over parts of Texas. You'll notice we're not quite there yet along the East Coast, but as we go through time, watch how that heat builds as we work into Monday and Tuesday. There's where you start to see the worst of the heat builds shift from the plains across the Ohio and Tennessee valleys and over to the Atlantic coast, where parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, also into parts of Maryland, even New Jersey, up into Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, seeing temperatures around 100 or a little bit above as we head into Monday and Tuesday. And this will be the focus of the heat, the hottest temperatures here, although we will see other areas to the west of there with scattered 100-degree readings. As we work deeper into the week, Wednesday into Thursday, look how that heat builds. We still are seeing temperatures in the triple digits from around Maryland, North Carolina, Virginia, down into South Carolina, Georgia, near 100 in Birmingham, near 100 in Nashville, back all the way to the west into Dallas, where we finally, as that high pressure system out of Canada drops a little farther south later in the week, we start to see a break in the northern plains with the hottest of the weather. But the heat will continue right on. This is into Friday even, triple digit heat across the Atlantic coast, back into the middle Mississippi River Valley, back into Texas, back into the plains. So we do see a knocking down of the heat by the time we get into Friday and Saturday across the Northeast, where we're going to go from near 100-degree temperatures back into the 60s and 70s for parts of Massachusetts and Connecticut, back into New England. But the rest of much of the country just continues to bake in the heat and humidity. All right, a little closer inspection of what's going to be happening with the thunderstorms and the chances of severe weather as we go through the weekend. Saturday morning, thunderstorms moving out of parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota up into Canada. And then the rest of Saturday should be fairly quiet across this region. Can't rule out a few other pop-up thunderstorms, some strong across the U.S.-Canadian border by the time we get into Saturday evening and early Sunday. But then Sunday, we start to see more thunderstorms kind of popping across this area, North Dakota, back into parts of South Dakota as well. These could be severe, highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center, as I mentioned earlier. And then as we go into Sunday night and Monday, more thunderstorms popping, Wisconsin into Minnesota, back into parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. And finally, we start to see it line up on Monday into bigger thunderstorms as that high out of Canada tries to nudge a little farther to the south, banking up against the heat ridge that's building over parts of the southeast. Let me zoom in a little closer to the south and east of this area. You'll see the thunderstorms as we head into Saturday, fairly quiet across this region after the early morning thunderstorms of Saturday. Sunday, fairly quiet as well from the Great Lakes back into Iowa and parts of Missouri. And then Monday, we start to see that front sink down to the south. Big thunderstorms developing during the middle of the day into the afternoon across on Monday from the Great Lakes, Wisconsin, back into Iowa. That drifts down to the south. Any of these storms in this line could be severe, and it continues as we head into Monday night and Tuesday across parts of Wisconsin and Iowa. Gusty winds and hail will be a threat here, and that front banks up against that high and kind of stops its southward progression and hangs up. So we could also be seeing some heavy rains from Wisconsin back into Iowa Monday, Tuesday, where we're not going to be seeing much of a southward progression of that system. As far as the extended outlook goes, we are going to see temperatures remaining above average here. This is from the Climate Prediction Center between June 28th to July 4th. You can see it's calling for above average temperatures to continue across the central Atlantic states. And then we also see more heat build back over the Rockies. And as far as precipitation goes, we see above average chances of precipitation, mainly in the heat of the day, the heat and humidity of the day, just pop-ups though for much of the eastern part of the country. Well, make sure that you do a couple things. If you're in those areas where there's a risk for severe weather, make sure that you stay and pay attention to local watches and warnings in your area. And then if you're going to be in those areas where the heat will be building from the central Atlantic through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys back into the central and southern plains, just make sure that you don't overexert yourself in the heat. Wear lightweight, light colored clothing, stay hydrated, and just use common sense when you're going to be outside in that really, really high heat level. If you would like help formulating your severe weather safety plan for your family, check out this video and also check out my YouTube shorts for lots of fascinating facts about tornadoes and more severe weather safety tips. Until I see you next time, stay safe.